Thank you, and good afternoon. And I'm very happy to be here because we shed light on things, but we also try to be very positive and to help all the NGOs in the front lines and the businesses. So the scope of the Thomson Reuters Foundation that I run is huge regarding slavery. So we have 4 programs, and of the 4 programs, you have one which is editorial. So we have a team of journalists who cover the underreported issues. And what I call the underreported issues are women's rights, human rights, slavery and trafficking, human impact of climate change. And since 6 months now, thanks to a big Omidyar grant, we cover also access to land and access to property, which is a gigantic issue around the world, and nobody covers it. The news that we publish are then published immediately on the Reuters wires, so it gives us a bigger impact and goes to all media around the world. But what we try to do also is to be specific. So for instance, I have since January 2 journalists in India who cover only slavery, and on a daily basis. And we translate everything they write into Hindi and Tamil in order to push it to the press in these languages and reach the bigger audience in India, because as you know, only 5% of Indians speak English. So we do that, and I will give, we have tons of examples, but I will give you just one. We published in July a big investigation on the mica industry in India. Mica is a mineral that is very difficult to get, and so they use massively children to get it because the little fingers are easier. So you have massive slavery in the mica mines in India, and you have death of children. Mica is used in all our cosmetics, for the lipsticks, for everything we wear. It is also used massively by car makers for their painting and many other things, and in many different places. India produced 60% of the mica in the world. After the publication of this investigation in July, which was used worldwide, Volkswagen announced 4 weeks ago that they suspend all their contracts with Indian producers of mica in order to review how it works in their mines. And then the government of India, of course, had to say, oh, we are going to also investigate into it. And of course, they are very aware of the situation, but they will investigate. So we try to have impact. We have 3 other programs. One is the training of journalists around the world. So we train them on any issue in all languages. But one of the issues we train them more and more now is how you cover slavery and trafficking in your country. Because it is a very dangerous thing to do, to cover these issues. You have a lot of money at stake. It's $150 billion business according to the ILO. That is to say that it's a much bigger business than 150, because ILO is always very conservative. They think there is 21 million slaves in the world, where we know there is a lot more, and Walk Free said 45.8 recently. So $150 billion business. We help journalists to cover and be cautious when they cover the issue. We did big training in India, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and we are going to do one in London in 2 weeks' time. So that's the second program. The third program is Trust Law, and ETI knows it because you are a member. Maybe you don't know, Cindy. But it's the biggest pro bono platform in the world, where once an NGO or a social enterprise is member, we take over all their legal issues. So we have 620 law firms around the world who work pro bono for our 3,000 NGOs and social enterprise. So ETI is one of them, Transparency International is another, Doctors Without Borders, I mean, all of them. So that's a big one, because we can do cross-border research, and we do a lot of this research in the field of slavery. So one of the research we did in the Philippines for the Visayan Forum, for instance, was followed by a vote of a law on domestic labor in the Philippines. It has changed the life of 2 million workers in the Philippines. It was White and Case who took the research in 12 countries to do comparison. So many things through Trust Law. And then the last one is Trust Women, which is this big conference where we take action to put the rule of law behind women's rights and to fight slavery. So I created it in 2012, and since we have one day dedicated to slavery where we take big actions. And one of these big actions was the first year to convince the American banks to look at the credit card data of their clients, see when there was a pattern of human trafficker, and in that case, share with law enforcement. So I co-hosted the group with Cyrus Vance because I thought that if I invited all the big banks to discuss with me, they would not show up. So I asked Cyrus if he would come, and he was delighted to come. We co-hosted, so all the banks came. And we designed with the best NGOs in the US the red flags that they would incorporate in their software. And when the red flags flash, they share with law enforcement. Cyrus was back at the conference 2 years ago. He will be there in 2 weeks' time in London because we have our fifth conference. He said that since this is in place, he receives double suspicious reports, which allow him to prosecute slavers on data rather than only on the strengths of the victim, which, as we know, has been so much abused that sometimes they are pretty weak. So that's one action, but we have many others. One big one that we took last year was to create the Stop Slavery Award. So we will give the Stop Slavery Award at the conference, Trust Women Conference on the 30th November in London, to corporations who are best in class to try to clean their supply chain from forced labor. And I insist to try to clean their supply chain because, as we know, corporations, no one corporation can say I'm slave free. So we prepared a big questionnaire, very deep. I mean, all the corporations who were candidates, by the way, no candidate in the construction industry, interesting, as no candidate in the garment industry, except one very small one. But many candidates, and who took the pain to answer the questionnaire. And it was, they told me, a work of 8 days for their chief procurement officer to do, because it was very thorough, done with all the specialists. We have put this questionnaire on the web, on our website, stopslaveryaward.com, but the website of the foundation is trust.org, so you can find everything. And many corporations who were not candidates because they were not good enough to be, told us that this has become now, and I'm speaking of Unilever and many others, these have become their Bible to know exactly where to look into their supply chain and how. To my surprise, among the candidates, it was a voluntary act. We had very big corporations, and I will mention just a few of them because they are in the short list, but Apple, Tesco, Thai Union, Hewlett-Packard, NXP Semiconductors, etc. So big corporation took the pain to fill this questionnaire, and after to probably be under more scrutiny from media if they received the award. So it was quite brave. So it was very good. Why we did that? It's because it's good to shed light and shame, because once you risk to have your brand damaged, you take action, and you take action very quickly. Government take years to take action, and then they do a law, and then will they implement the law forcefully? Nobody knows, and we have good reasons to doubt. I'm not speaking of the UK, but I'm speaking globally. And companies, when their brand risks to be damaged, act very quickly. So we thought that, helping the private sector to do this effort and to compensate them. So the jury to judge this Stop Slavery Award is completely independent. It is Kailash Satyarthi with the Nobel Prize in India on slavery, John Ruggie, who did the UN Principles on Business and Human Rights, Cyrus Vance, Kevin Ireland, who was there, I missed him, and a judge on the Hague Tribunal. So it's a very independent jury, and we will give the award in 2 weeks' time. And I'm sure that next year we will have a lot more candidates, and I could encourage you to look into it and see if you are more or less in the good lines. To finish very quickly, if I can, 1 second, it's just an anecdote, but it speaks millions. 3 years ago, I had at the conference, we always open the conference with survivors, and then we have a big panel on cleaning your supply chain. So last year we had Nestle, Tesco, and many others, and this year still more. And we have survivors. 3 years ago, this survivor was a Nepalese. He could not get a job in Nepal. He did what they do, gave money to a broker who told him, you will have a fantastic job in Qatar. As he speaks English and he writes, he told him, you will work as a clerk in an office. Of course, as soon as he arrived, his passport was taken away. He was pushed on construction site where he worked 15 hours a day under excruciating sun, etc., etc. After 2 years and a half, his mother was dying, so they gave him his passport back, and he never came back. And he came at the conference and he spoke. And what was extraordinary, there was a delegate in the room, a woman, who came to me after, and she said, "Can I buy the debt of Dipendra?" And so I put them together, and she said, "What is your debt?" Which was years to refund now. And he said $4,000. So more or less in the room, the 500 delegates could have given him the $4,000, and he would be no longer in debt bondage. She gave him more. Now he runs an NGO in Nepal, etc. But you have so many of these stories that you are all responsible, really, to not accept that and to make it not happen. Thank you.